I want to ask you a terrifying question. Imagine you have worked hard for 20 years. You have saved all your money, you have bought a beautiful house, you feel safe, you feel rich.
Now, imagine you wake up tomorrow morning. You walk to the bank to get some cash for breakfast, but the door is locked. The manager is gone, and your money, every single dollar, has vanished into thin air.
You go to your job, but the factory is closed. You go home, but the bank is there to take your keys. In 24 hours, you have gone from a successful citizen to a homeless beggar.
This sounds like a nightmare. It sounds like a horror movie, but for millions of Americans in 1929, this was real life.
Today, we are telling the story of the day the money died. Welcome to the Great Depression.
Hello, and welcome back to Level Up English. I am your host, Atlas.
And I am Nova. We are thrilled to have you here with us today.
At Nova, today's episode is special. We are not just telling a story today. We are handing our listeners a key.
That is right. Today, we are unlocking one of the most important chapters in modern history, the Great Depression. But why does this matter to you, the English learner?
That is the question. Why should you spend the next hour listening to a story about 1929? Here's why. If you want to sound sophisticated in English, you cannot just talk about the weather and your hobbies. You need to be able to talk about money. You need to be able to talk about crisis. You need to be able to talk about human resilience.
By the end of this lesson, you will not just know history, you will master the specific vocabulary of finance and poverty. You will master the past perfect tense, which is the secret weapon for telling complex stories. And you will understand the American mindset, why Americans are so obsessed with hard work and freedom.
We are going to give you the cultural fluency that textbooks ignore. We are going to teach you how to argue with a stubborn family member in English. We are going to teach you the idioms that business people use today, which were actually born in the 1930s.
So if you are ready to take your English from intermediate to intellectual, stay with us.
Let's begin. I want you to close your eyes. We are going to travel back in time. We are going to the year 1928.
Imagine the scene. It is the roaring 20s. The music is loud. It is jazz. The cars are shiny. They are Model T Fords. The economy is booming. Construction workers are building the Empire State Building in New York, climbing higher into the sky than anyone has ever gone. Everyone feels rich. It feels like a party that will never end.
But then, the calendar turns to October 1929, and suddenly, the music stops, the lights go out, and when you wake up, the money is gone.
Today, we explore what happened, why it happened, and the language you need to describe it.
Let's start with the economics. Students often ask me, Atlas, how does a country go from being the richest in the world to the poorest overnight?
It is a fascinating question. The answer lies in a concept called an economic bubble.
Let's define that. A bubble. Usually we think of soap bubbles that children play with. They're round, they're shiny, they float in the air.
Exactly. And what happens to a soap bubble if you touch it? It bursts. It vanishes. In economics, a bubble is when the price of something becomes much, much higher than its actual value. People buy it just because they think the price will keep going up forever.
In 1929, the bubble was the stock market. Let's use an analogy to make this crystal clear. Nova, imagine you open a lemonade stand.
Okay, I am selling lemonade. It is delicious. I sell 1 cup for $1.
Perfect. You have a solid business. But then your neighbors get excited. They say, Nova's lemonade is the future. They want to buy a piece of your company. They buy a stock in your stand for $10.
Wow, $10. But I'm only selling $1 lemonade.
It doesn't matter. They're excited. Then their friends come along. They see the price going up. They say, I want to buy that stock. They offer $20, then $50, then $100.
This is amazing. My little lemonade stand is now worth millions of dollars on paper. I feel rich. My neighbors feel rich.
But here is the danger. Are you actually selling millions of dollars of lemonade?
No, I'm still just selling a few cups a day. The real value hasn't changed. Only the speculative value has changed.
That is the bubble. And on October 29, 1929, a day known as Black Tuesday, the bubble burst. People suddenly realized, wait a minute, this paper isn't worth anything.
And that led to the panic. Everyone tried to sell their stocks at the exact same moment. Imagine a crowded theater where someone screams, "Fire!" Everyone runs for the single exit at the same time. They trample each other.
In the stock market, if everyone is selling and nobody is buying, the price crashes to zero. Billions of dollars vanished in a few hours.
Now here is the part that connects to regular people. This is called the domino effect. Domino 1, the investors lose their money. Domino 2, the banks fail.
Why did the banks fail? This is crucial to understand. The banks had taken regular people's savings, your grandmother's money, your teacher's money, and they had lent it to the investors to buy stocks. When the stock market crashed, the money was gone.
This led to the most terrifying phenomenon of the Great Depression, the bank run.
Picture this scene. You're a factory worker. You have saved $500 over 10 years. That's your life savings. You hear a rumor that your bank is in trouble. You rush to the bank.
When you arrive, you see a line of 1,000 people. Everyone is screaming. Everyone is pushing. The police are there on horses, trying to hold the crowd back. You wait for hours, clutching your bank book.
Finally, you get to the front of the line, and just as you step forward, the bank manager locks the heavy doors. He hangs a sign in the window, closed.
He looks at you through the glass and shakes his head. The vault is empty. Your money is gone.
This created deep psychological trauma. People stopped trusting the system. They started hiding their cash under their mattresses or burying it in the backyard in coffee cans. And because they were afraid, they stopped spending.
And that's the death spiral. If you stop buying shoes, the shoe store closes. If the shoe store closes, the shoe factory closes. If the factory closes, the workers lose their jobs.
This brings us to our vocabulary lab. To discuss this era intelligently, you need the specific vocabulary of financial ruin. These are words that you will still hear today on the news during recessions.
Let's start with the most formal one, bankruptcy, spelling B-A-N-K-R-U-P-T-C-Y. Definition. This is a legal status. It is when a person or a company goes to court and formally declares that they cannot pay their debts. Context, in 1932, thousands of businesses declared bankruptcy.
I want to highlight the collocation there. We say to declare bankruptcy or to file for bankruptcy. We do not say make bankruptcy.
The next word is specific to housing, foreclosure. Pronunciation, for-clo-jure. Note the S sounds like zh, like in the word vision. Definition, this happens when you have borrowed money from a bank to buy a house, a mortgage, but you stop making the monthly payments. The bank takes legal possession of the house. Visual. Imagine a bank officer arriving at your home, putting a for sale sign on the lawn, and changing the locks while you are still inside.
And what if you are renting an apartment? That brings us to word number 3, eviction. Definition, this is when a landlord forces a tenant to leave because they haven't paid rent. Visual, imagine coming home from looking for work and finding all your furniture, your bed, your table, your clothes, sitting on the sidewalk. That is an eviction.
So if you are evicted, where do you go? In the 1930s, people built shantytowns. Definition, a shanty is a roughly built hut or cabin, usually made of waste materials like cardboard, scrap metal, or old tires. Context, homeless people built entire villages of these shacks in public parks. They called them Hoovervilles.
That name, Hooverville, is a dark joke. They named them after the president, Herbert Hoover. They blamed him for the crisis. If you slept on a park bench covered in old newspapers, you called the newspaper a Hoover blanket. If you turned your empty pockets inside out to show you had no money, those were Hoover flags.
Let's add 2 more essential terms about survival, breadline and soup kitchen.
A soup kitchen was a place run by a charity or a church where they gave away free soup to the hungry.
A bread line was the line of men waiting outside for that food.
Culturally, the bread line was a symbol of shame. American men in the 1930s were raised to be providers. To stand in a line and ask for free food was humiliating. Often, men would pull their hats down low over their eyes so their neighbors wouldn't recognize them.
Let's do a quick review. I will describe a situation, and you think of the word. The bank takes ownership of your home because you didn't pay the mortgage. Foreclosure. You go to court to say you have zero money and cannot pay your debts. Bankruptcy. A line of men waiting for free food from a charity. Breadline.
Okay, Nova, we have discussed the financial disaster, but the Great Depression was unique because it wasn't just about money, it was also an environmental apocalypse.
That is right. In the middle of America, states like Oklahoma, Texas, and Kansas, something terrifying happened. We call it the Dust Bowl.
To understand this, we need to visualize the geography. The middle of America is called the Great Plains. It is flat, windy, and historically, it was covered in thick prairie grass.
But in the 1920s, farmers got greedy. The price of wheat was high, so they used tractors to dig up all the grass. They plowed millions of acres. They removed the natural skin of the earth that held the soil in place.
And then, the rain stopped.
This gives us our key vocabulary word, drought. Spelling D-R-O-U-G-H-T. Pronunciation, drought. It rhymes with out. Definition, a prolonged period of abnormally low rainfall.
Because of the drought, the sun baked the exposed soil until it turned into fine powder. And then the winds came, huge winds. They picked up this powder and created massive storms.
People called them black blizzards. Description: imagine looking at the horizon. You see a wall of black dirt, 10,000 feet high, moving at 60 miles per hour. It blocked out the sun completely. It turned noon into midnight. Chickens went to sleep because they thought it was night.
I want to share a detail that really helps you feel the horror of this. The dust was so fine that it acted like water. It came through the cracks in the walls. It came under the doors. People had to sleep with wet cloths over their faces just to filter the air.
When families sat down to eat dinner, they had to keep the plates covered with a napkin. You would lift the napkin and take a bite instantly. Otherwise, the food would be covered in grit.
It also caused a new disease, dust pneumonia. Pneumonia is usually a bacterial or viral infection of the lungs, but this was mechanical. People's lungs literally filled up with dirt. Thousands of people died, especially children and the elderly.
And here is a scientific fact that blows my mind: static electricity. The fact, the friction of the dust swirling in the air created massive amounts of static electricity. The effect, the air was so charged that if you shook hands with someone, the shock could knock you to the ground. Cars stopped working because the electricity shorted out the engines. It felt like the end of the world.
So put yourself in the shoes of a farmer. The bank has lost your savings. The market has crashed, so nobody is buying your wheat. And now your farm is buried under 6 feet of black dust. You have no choice. You have to leave.
This leads us to the Great Migration. Millions of people packed their old cars and moved west, hoping for a better life in California.
Before we follow these refugees on their journey, we need to enter our grammar spotlight. To tell stories about history, specifically about cause and effect, you need to master a specific verb tense.
We are talking about the past perfect tense.
A lot of advanced learners still avoid this tense. They ask, Nova, why can't I just use simple past?
You can use simple past, but past perfect adds precision. We use past perfect when we have 2 events in the past, and we want to clearly show which one happened first. It establishes a timeline in the listener's mind.
The formula is subject plus had plus past participle, V3. Examples, I had eaten, they had left, she had seen.
Let's apply this to the Dust Bowl story to see why it matters. Event A happened first, the rain stopped. Event B happened second, the crops died.
If we use simple past, the rain stopped and the crops died, it sounds like a list. But if we want to show that event A caused event B, we use past perfect. Sentence, the crops died because the rain had stopped.
By using had stopped, we push that action further back in time. Let's look at another example with the bank crisis. Event A, the bank lost the money. Event B, the family became poor.
Sentence, the family became poor because the bank had lost their money.
Be careful with the contraction. In natural spoken English, we almost always shorten had to just d. They'd lost their money. He'd left the farm.
Let's try a negative example. Event A, he did not eat for 3 days. Event B, he fainted.
Event A, she forgot her wallet. Event B, she couldn't buy the bread.
Now I want to do a drill. I will give you 2 events. I want you to combine them in your head using the past perfect.
Ready?
Event 1, the storm destroyed the roof. Event 2, they slept in the car. The answer is, they slept in the car because the storm had destroyed the roof.
Let's try a harder one.
Event 1, she forgot her wallet. Event 2, she couldn't buy the bread. The answer is, she couldn't buy the bread because she had forgotten her wallet.
One final one to test your intuition. Event 1, the bank closed. Event 2, he realized he lost everything.
The answer is, when the bank closed, he realized he had lost everything.
Now that we have our grammar tools, let's look at the culture of the 1930s. Who were the people on the road?
The farmers from the Dust Bowl headed west. They wanted to go to California. They saw flyers that said, "California has jobs, pick fruit, good wages."
They loaded up their old trucks, often tying mattresses, buckets, and even grandma's rocking chair to the roof, and drove on Route 66. But when they arrived in California, they found a harsh reality.
The locals in California didn't want them. There were too many workers and not enough jobs. The locals called these migrants Okies.
This word comes from Oklahoma, but it became a slur. It was a hateful insult. If someone called you an Okie, they were saying you were dirty, poor, uneducated, and unwanted.
There was another group of travelers, the hobos. Definition: a hobo was usually a single man traveling alone to find work. They didn't have cars, so they traveled by riding the rails.
Riding the rails meant jumping onto moving freight trains. It was illegal and incredibly dangerous. If you slipped, you could lose a leg under the wheels. But millions of men did it to travel from city to city looking for a day's work.
Now let's talk about rebellion. When people are desperate, they get angry. In 1932, something shocking happened in Washington, D.C., called the Bonus Army.
This is a crucial story. Thousands of veterans from World War I, men who had fought for their country, marched to the Capitol. The conflict? The government had promised them a bonus payment for their service, but the government said, "We will pay you in 1945. The veterans said, "We are starving now. We need the money now."
They camped in front of the White House, but the president, Herbert Hoover, ordered the U.S. Army to remove them. The Army used tear gas and tanks against their own veterans. They burned down the veterans' tents.
It was a shameful moment. It showed that the government was at war with its own people.
But there was another kind of rebellion: crime. In the 1930s, America fell in love with bank robbers.
Specifically, Bonnie and Clyde. They were a young couple who drove around the Midwest robbing banks.
You might think the public would hate them, but actually, they were folk heroes. Why? Because the public hated the banks. The banks were the ones foreclosing on homes. So when people saw Bonnie and Clyde robbing a bank, they cheered. They thought, "Good, the banks robbed us, now you rob them."
On the other side of culture, we had escapism. Life was hard, so people needed to escape into fantasy. This was the golden age of movies.
Tickets were cheap, maybe 10 cents, and the theater had heating.
People went to watch monster movies like King Kong in 1933 or Frankenstein. They watched musicals with rich people dancing in tuxedos. For 2 hours, they could forget their troubles.
And at home, they had the radio. This brings us to the new president, Franklin D. Roosevelt, or FDR.
FDR was a master of the radio. He gave speeches called fireside chats. He didn't shout like a politician. He spoke calmly and warmly like a father talking to his family in the living room. He explained what the government was doing. He gave people hope.
We have covered history, grammar, and culture. Now let's focus on deep conversation. We are going to analyze a typical kitchen table argument from this era.
Imagine a husband and wife, John and Mary. They are in Oklahoma. The dust is blowing outside. The bank is coming to take their house the next day. They have to decide, do we stay and fight, or do we leave for California?
We're going to read you some lines, they might say. I want you to listen to the emotion and the vocabulary.
First, listen to the wife, Mary. She is the pragmatist. She is scared for her children.
John, look at the windowsill. I just dusted it and it's black again. The baby is coughing up mud. We can't stay here.
Notice the persuasive detail. The baby is coughing up mud. She isn't talking about money. She is talking about health. She is appealing to his protective instinct.
Now listen to the husband, John. He is proud. He is stubborn.
I am not leaving. My father built this house. I was born in this room. If I leave, I'm nothing. I'm just another bum on the road.
Look at the psychology here. For him, the land is his identity. If he leaves, he feels like he is losing his manhood. He uses the word bum, which is a derogatory word for a homeless person. He is afraid of losing his dignity.
Now Mary pushes back. She challenges his pride.
Is your pride more important than your son's life? Please, John, swallow your pride. Pack the truck.
There is a fantastic idiom there. Swallow your pride.
Meaning, to put your ego aside, to accept something humble or humiliating because it is necessary. It's like swallowing a bitter pill.
Finally, John accepts the truth.
Okay, you win. Get the blankets. We leave at midnight. This is the moment of resignation. He gives up the fight to save his family.
I want you to practice that idiom. Swallow your pride. Situation: you made a huge mistake at work. You don't want to apologize because you're embarrassed, but you must. Sentence: I had to swallow my pride and apologize to my boss.
Bonus idiom here is start over, meaning to begin a new life from zero. Example: after the fire destroyed their business, they had to start over. So how did this story end? How did America crawl out of the darkness?
It wasn't magic. It was aggressive government action. When FDR became president, he launched the New Deal.
The New Deal was a massive series of government programs to create jobs. We call them the alphabet agencies because they used acronyms.
Let's look at the three most famous ones. The CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps. This was for young men. The government hired them to protect nature. They planted 3 billion trees. They built state parks. They lived in camps and sent $25 of their $30 monthly wage home to their families. The WPA, Works Progress Administration, these guys were the builders. They built roads, bridges, and schools. But they also hired artists to paint murals in post offices and writers to record history. The SSA, Social Security Administration, this created a safety net for the elderly. Before this, if you were old and poor, you starved. Social Security gave you a monthly pension.
There was also the bank holiday. This is a great term. In 1933, FDR closed every bank in the country for a week. The logic: he said, we're going to check the books. We will only reopen the safe banks. The result, when the banks reopened, people trusted them again. They stopped taking their money out and started putting it back in. It saved the banking system.
But Nova, here's the big question. Did the New Deal end the Great Depression?
That is a debate historians still have. It helped. It fed people. It gave them dignity. It stopped a revolution. But the economy was still weak. The Depression didn't really end until 1941.
The real end came with World War II.
It is a tragic irony. In 1941, America entered the war. Suddenly, the country needed tanks, planes, ships, and uniforms. Every factory opened up 24 hours a day. Everyone, men and women, got a job. The unemployment rate dropped from 25% to 1% almost overnight.
The biggest economic disaster in history was solved by the biggest war in history.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today. We started with the roaring party of the 1920s, watched the bubble burst in 1929, survived the black blizzards of the Dust Bowl, traveled west with the migrants, and watched the government rebuild the system.
Let's recap the key English takeaways from this deep dive. Vocab: bankruptcy, foreclosure, eviction, drought, shantytown, breadline, soup kitchen. Grammar: past perfect, the rain had stopped. Idioms: make ends meet, swallow your pride, start over.
But beyond the English, there is a lesson here about resilience. Definition: resilience is the strength to recover from difficulty, to get knocked down and stand back up.
The generation that survived the Great Depression is often called the greatest generation. They learned that money can vanish in a second. They learned that easy times don't last forever. But they also learned that if you stick together, you can survive the hardest storms.
I hope this helps you understand the American spirit a little bit better. Americans are optimistic, but they carry the memory of this hard time in their cultural DNA.
We hope this masterclass helped you level up your English vocabulary. If you enjoyed this long-form content, please let us know in the comments. We want to know if you prefer these in-depth episodes.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to Level Up English. It really helps us keep the lights on.
Keep practicing, keep reading, and remember, even after the darkest night, the sun always rises.
See you next time.